And we're back with the program. It's Gerald Glasser coming right back at you here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. Thanks so much for watching us sing. I had a great conversation with TJ Johnson on what's going on with Xbox, but I cannot have an extended conversation on what's going on with Xbox, the future, and basically everything that's going on right now with all their struggles without the best person to go ahead and talk about everything going on with, of course, Xbox. A man who's here, who's been part of the show for, oh, what? My gosh, I was going to say 6 years. It's 7 years almost going on now. My
Long
gosh.
time.
Yep, he returns to us indeed. For now, he's still on a hiatus. He's still on a baby hiatus, but I'm going to go. I had to pull him away to talk Xbox with all this news going on. Good man indeed. It is, of course, my good friend, Josh the Great himself, Josh Pederson, and my friend. Great to have you back, even if only in a limited fashion to talk Xbox. I'm getting all teary in the eye.
We got to entice the viewers back. You got to tease my return a little bit, and then after a certain amount of time passes, then come back so they know that they have to keep listening to get more of this lovely honey voice of mine.
Absolutely. The sexy radio voice is back.
Yeah. Hey, also, like, if Phil Spencer is calling you during the show, like, I know that was him on the phone just now. You can answer it. It's fine. I mean,
No. You're much more important right now than Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer is persona non grata when it comes to Xbox fans until he hopefully redeems himself on the Xbox showcase coming up in June. But he is part of the issue right now because Xbox has had probably as I don't know in the history of Xbox, Xbox has had some highs and lows, but in the past 10 days, I think this is about as bad as Xbox's luck has, and or at not well, some of it's because of their own doing, but this is about as bad for Xbox as has gotten in the past 10 days.
Yeah, so when I first saw those comments that he made, I don't know, it was weird. I couldn't tell if he was like conceding the console race or if he's just saying like, "Hey, yeah, what the people in the media are saying is true. Like I'm conceding to that point." But because, Redfall, it was a broken game. It was a misstep in what could have been a big opportunity for Xbox. Cuz that was supposed to be like their what do you call it, like their flagship 2023 game, and it came out and it was busted up. And I know he's saying like, "Hey, yeah, we could have done a better job of putting resources into this that we didn't, and or we could have like kept a better eye on what they were creating." But apparently they had been it was Arcane, right, that made that.
Yes,
So
Arcane out of Texas.
yeah, so they had been working on that game since before Xbox purchased them. So
Yes.
um
Should have been
like,
easier considering they only needed now to do it, put it on two platforms on PC and Xbox.
right, but there was, I mean, I guess, like, not to make excuses for Xbox, but there wasn't like that level of quality control from its inception.
Hmm.
So I guess
Yep.
like maybe it was hard to keep track of what they were doing in that aspect, but they should have had people test the game and just check it out, have not critics, what do you call them, like game testers or whatever, come out and play this game before putting it out. But I think Microsoft got to the point where they were so desperate to put really anything out that this was the byproduct of that.
And then, like you said, with his comments on Kind of Funny, that depending on the way you want to interpret it, it seemed to me like a concession, which, as both gaming fans, Xbox fans, but you as probably our biggest Xbox fan, although TJ does give you a run for your money on that one. And I've always said Xbox has provided some of the best values for consumers, in gaming for the past 10 years with
Yeah.
some of its options for both the Xbox One and now the Xbox Series and with the Game Pass. I think that I am very disheartened and very discouraged by what he has to say in regards to that. Just giving up the race, that's the way I interpret it. He's conceding on that level. I mean, he's saying, "Oh yeah, I want Xbox Game Pass on every single form of electronics that's out there," but I'm
Yeah.
conceding the console race, which to me is just words I would never say out of my mouth if I was actually in his position.
Yeah, I don't think that he really planned what he was going to say there. I think it kind of just came out of his mouth. He's probably bummed because that was literally like on the heels of Redfall coming out. I think it was like two or 3 days later.
Yes.
Um, So I don't think there's a lot of like rehearsal, like how am I going to handle this?
A week
And not
out,
to mention,
a decision on Activision as well.
yeah, that's right. That was two big hits, and they still don't know what's going on with that. With them fighting that, but also not to make it again, not to make excuses, but like I think there's a lot of pressure when you're on a show like Kind of Funny because they are like the world's biggest like PlayStation fanboys on that network. So it's hard, you want to like you don't want to sit there and like defend, not defend, but like sit there and like complain about, oh, hey, you're wrong, stuff like that. So I think he was very humble. Phil Spencer was very humble, very truthful, and um, I think that with Starfield coming out and with the holidays, I think there's still an opportunity to turn the ship around. But that being said, I actually have bought more places. I've purchased one Xbox game this entire year. Like I've played a couple things on Games Pass. Like I sat down, spent some time with like Wolong Fallen Dynasty and Atomic Heart. But like I have mostly just been playing my PlayStation. Like, yeah, Xbox hasn't really had anything that's made me want to sit down and devote any time to it this past year.
And that may be part of the problem why they've gotten themselves in the position that they're in. And of course, you could always say the pandemic, but that excuse is now, it's 3 years in the making. I mean, you could only use that for so long. This is something that Xbox has been planning as far as the acquisitions of the studios and everything else there, as far as the games that they should have had lined up well beforehand.
Yeah.
Sony and Nintendo have not had as much of a problem trying to release any type of content, whereas Xbox, it's been smaller releases, and what they're doing as far as on a large scale with Redfall has fallen miserably. Their only hits have really come on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, yeah. So I look at it as like because I'm a teacher, so I'm gonna put this into like teaching perspective. Like there's a difference between teaching and managing one kid versus teaching and managing like 30. So I imagine that Xbox is a little bit over again, not making excuses because like putting out a game like Redfall seemed a little unacceptable, but they're probably having a hard time keeping track of like who is doing what and how looking forward, how are they going to manage, like how are they going to know like who's going to present them with a similar problem? We have all these games slated to come out, but who knows how many of these games have been in production for how many years before the acquisition of these companies. So it's very likely that this could happen again two or three times before something comes out that people are actually like, yes, this is amazing.
And that's going to be a problem if Starfield, which is supposed to be your big release upon all big releases, I'm expecting a Forza to probably come out before the end of the year as well. But really,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, Starfield has much more pressure on it than it ever did before.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that this sadly, Starfield could be what breaks Xbox if it doesn't deliver the experience that everybody hopes it's going to deliver. Starfield could very well, like Spencer said, end up shifting that console war like for good. Maybe we don't know. It's an unfortunate position that they find themselves in, and there's with the exception of Forza, and there's not really anything else that they have announced coming out being Xbox exclusive.
Well, by the time you get back as the regular sit-in host of what we do here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, we will have the June showcase and Starfield presentation, basically the Xbox showcase, showcasing what's coming up for Xbox. And then, of course, after that, immediately will be the Starfield presentation in and of itself, which I think is actually good because it just shows how much confidence they have in it, which is exactly what they need right now because they're really in a hurtful way right now. I think that when it comes down to it, that's what I'm looking forward to. But before we really get into that, before we really get into what you would be looking for, what you would be doing to get Xbox back on the right track, let me hear your thoughts though on this, my friend. When it comes down to it, I asked TJ Johnson when we were talking about this at like, I don't know, I think about 2 o'clock in the morning, some one time a couple weeks ago before we had our conversation, when this all went down, or actually it was a week ago, whatnot. And one of the things I said was it about time for Phil Spencer to turn in his Xbox badge? is it the time, because he has been in charge of Xbox now for closing on 10 years since the debacle of Don Matrick and his famous words that he said that got him in trouble and ultimately ousted. Xbox has not learned from history. History has repeated itself. We're now in a situation where mistakes and bad releases and delayed launches, and then Xbox's Halo presentation has just not been what it needs to be. Halo is no longer that je ne sais quoi, that thing that holds the Xbox together as it once was. And then you have the words that were said by Phil Spencer. Is it time to make a change at the top of Xbox?
That's hard to say because Phil Spencer he genuinely cares about the Xbox community and the fans.
And I
And
agree with you on that, but that still shouldn't excuse it.
no, it doesn't excuse it. It's hard to know because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know like were Spencer's hands tied in this because he was very open, with his comments. He was very open and he seemed very disappointed and earnest. So like we don't know if his hands were tied due to Microsoft's board or whatever is going on behind the curtains at Microsoft that we don't know about. And I like Spencer a lot, and yeah, maybe it's time for him to go, but like I still think that he's meant or not meant, but like he still has the ability to do great things at Xbox. He just needs to, I guess, maybe have the freedom to do it.
But then again, who would be restricting him? Because Microsoft, I mean, when you're ready to spend 60 some odd $billion for Activision and you've made all the acquisitions that you can as far as buying studios on the behest and the request of Phil Spencer, what is being restricted?
But so think about with all the money being spent on these
And I'm
things.
playing devil's advocate just to
No,
let you,
no, I
yeah.
totally realize that, but with all the money being spent on these acquisitions, who's to say that like Microsoft's not pressuring them to be like, hey, we need to see some returns on these investments because we have our quarterly earnings coming up or whatever, and you need to put something out. So it's possible that he's got, again, not excusing him, not excusing them, but he's probably got a lot of pressure on his shoulders. So it's a job much like being the president of the United States. Like I don't think anybody right now would want it and like do well at it. But Spencer, he's hung in there, like he shows, like I said before, he like shows a genuine interest in the fans and the community. I just that's a really tough like question, because like I don't know who else could get in there and do it better than him.
The thing right now is, okay, let's use a sports analogy because I do host a couple sports shows on the side. And I wanted to ask you this, if it was someone who's not producing for you after uh, you know, an up and down road with Xbox. It's been an up and
Okay.
down road this past decade with him in the helm. I understand with the pandemic, but all three of these companies, Nintendo and Sony, have also had the same issues during the pandemic, and yet they have found opportunities to go ahead and eventually thrive, or I shouldn't say thrive, but at least do well enough to get by and obviously still sell millions of units of their consoles. In the case of PlayStation, they came out last year with God of War, and then of course Horizon as well. And then you had with Nintendo, you had everybody still clamoring for Nintendo Switches to the point where don't even have it on the radar for a new console till at least late 2024 at the earliest. You see Zelda Tears of the Kingdom come out this past weekend and everybody's loving it, and it's already, pretty much the de facto 2023 game of the year. So the thing is, while they're building upon successes and overcoming the delays and the things that were caused by the pandemic, Xbox coming out of it seems to be very ill equipped and poorly prepared.
Yeah, well, I look at it like this: when you're managing less people, like you're able to put better things out. Like look at Sony and Nintendo, like they focus on one or two projects at a time, whereas like Microsoft, I think Microsoft kind of shot themselves in the foot by starting this like acquisition battle that they did, because now they have so many fires burning all at once, and they're not able to give those focused gaming experiences that Nintendo and Sony are able to give because they're having to manage so much all at once.
Once again, it is Josh Peterson, my good friend and longtime host of the Pop Culture Cosmos, right back here with me. He is still on hiatus, but he decided to step in because he had something to say about what's going on with the world of Xbox and all the trouble that they're in and seeing what they can do to help get themselves out of it. But my friend, one of the things I want to ask you though is going forward, you obviously have Starfield, which has so much pressure on it now, as I mentioned earlier. You most likely have a Forza on the way, but what do you think can click with Xbox? What moves can they make to go ahead and be able to reacclaim, I guess, or reclaim faith with the Xbox faithful?
That's I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately, and I honestly don't know. I look at like Halo Infinite. The game was okay, but it just was not the Halo experience
Well,
that.
how long did it take before it became okay?
Yeah, I mean, okay, out the gate, I enjoyed the game, but yeah, I mean, with all the issues that it faced up, that year up to its release date, yeah, that was tough. And then you're hearing about all like the creative team of Halo leaving the studio, and then um, the constant delays of these other games that they've been promising for like 4 or 5 years. I don't know like what path they should take to find success, but they need to do something, and not something hastily. They need to like look back at what made them successful in the first place and do something like that. Like I remember Halo Reach coming out. Like that was a fantastic game. Same thing with like Gears of War. Like maybe you can still focus on these franchises, but make like single experiences within these franchises to kind of rekindle interest. And then you're looking at, Fable is obviously going to take a long time to come out. Like Hellblade, they've been talking about forever. Still no news on when that game's coming out. There's too much. Like they've become like what Sony used to be. Hey, we're working on this game, and then you're 10, 12 years later, you finally get to see it. And I think that is definitely becoming an issue for them. When the first generation.
Dead Island too.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I don't know, man. That's a question that I can't answer. I wish I had a better idea. One thing they could do is if this Activision Blizzard deal goes through, like there's some powerful franchises there. Put out a Warcraft game, put out a Guitar Hero game. Like Guitar Hero games don't take that long to develop, and I know they're doing something with like Chat GDP to try to get another one of those games up and off the ground. So there are definitely smaller experiences that could find them success. They just, I don't know, they just need to do something. Like it's like that meme where someone's like poking something with a stick going, "Come on, do something." Like I said, PlayStation's kind of been my go-to this past year. So until something comes out on the Xbox that makes me, I'm playing Jedi Survivor on the Xbox, so I lied about that. Like I did choose to play that one, but that's just because I didn't know what was going to carry over from my last game, which I played on the Xbox also. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's yeah, Xbox is not it's not doing what it needs to do, and I think that it's become a machine instead of a focused studio, I guess you'd call them.
Well, again, there's some problems with it. A lot of issues and a lot of concerns that I have, and I know that you have as well. One of the things I did want to ask you though is about that pending Activision deal. We don't know if it's going to go through at this point in time.
No, no, absolutely not. Yeah,
UK has put just as far as a beginning block on it, whether or not they release that as far as that sale going through in the UK, that could really do some damage because if it doesn't go through, and then all that the anticipation aside, but also for the fact that I've spoken with Melinda and I've spoken with TJ on this in regards to Activision itself and Blizzard and all that, as far as the way that they're treated and the way things that have gone through, as far as the pending cases, as far as what happens in regards to the workplace environment that they've had over the past few years under CEO Bobby Kotick, who has done not the greatest of jobs because he's obviously waiting and just always for the next Call of Duty. Very much, very little aside from that has been his focus. Overwatch
yeah,
here, there, a little bit of Warcraft, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but nothing to the real extent that you should have as far as trying to create a library of great games, especially with the ton of IP that they actually have, that they have the
Yeah.
rights to. Your thoughts though on this Activision Xbox deal? I mean, you've been on the sidelines as this all has been taking place for the most part in this year. Want to hear your thoughts on what's going on with Xbox and Activision, and if this sale will actually and eventually go through.
Yeah, I think it'll go through. I mean, Xbox has enough money to grease a lot of pockets, I'm sure. And however, I did, when this first started happening, remember, I think it was like E3 2 years ago when they were talking about all these studio acquisitions.
Hmm.
You and I were talking, and I was like, this is cool, but I kind of think it's a bad idea because they're already having trouble juggling what they have. And lo and behold, 3 years later, this is proven to be more true than ever, right? Like, there's
Yes.
Sony puts out 2 or 3 games a year. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, with all these studios, Xbox is going to be putting out 10, 12 games a year. It's going to be amazing." And while I do love the Games Pass experience, I haven't loved the gaming experience that I've gotten this year. Um, with Activision and Blizzard, I do think that it'll go through, but I think it's going to drag on for a long time. So it could be months, years, maybe until we see the fruits of this labor.
And that's something I am hoping eventually we will see. I still think and still have hopes that it will go through, just because of the fact, again, when it comes to Xbox and Activision and Blizzard, I think the best course for this is to go forward. I understand that there's some issues regarding PlayStation, the availability of Call of Duty on that platform, but I think when it comes down to it, for the betterment of the video game industry and the betterment of that actual game development studios and company as a whole for Activision, they'd be on a better path if it was owned by somebody else.
Right, right. Let me make a yeah. Okay, so this is I agree and disagree. I think that these studios need to just like remain as their own thing. Like the system before wasn't broken. Like there was a lot of great experiences. There's a lot of great games that were exclusive to certain consoles, and they came out and they were quality titles. And now you're getting these games that are exclusive to consoles, and it's not the guarantee that it was going to be good that it once was. And with Sony, yeah, there's a lot of quality control and writing and narrative processes that go into their games, whereas like Microsoft did this thing where, like, why buy studios that delivered okay experiences when you could just go to like another studio and say, "Hey, I'll pay you this much, and I want this game exclusive to my console." It probably would cost them a lot less money, and they would not be seeing the delays and issues that they're seeing now. So, I hate to admit it. I hate to admit it because as much as I love Xbox, I'm looking at this in 2 or 3 years. I feel like a lot of these studios that Microsoft bought, they're going to be selling them, and that's going to make an even bigger like problem within the game industry.
And that would be a problem, you're right, if they did go ahead and sell that off, if they decide that Xbox is not going to be ending up the way it should be, and that's a problem. And after investing so much time and money on Microsoft's end, and also investing so much time and money on our end, if Xbox does not continue as a viable option for gamers, I really think that's a bad thing for the industry, and that's especially a bad thing for the gamer.
Well, and this year is going to really kind of shed light on whether or not that's going to happen. So, like we said before, Starfield has to be good, and they have to put some other things out this year that are good, because if they go all the way through, Starfield flops and they go all the way through 2023 without putting something out that people actually like, yeah, it's I think it could very well wreck their reputation, and I guess for them, the console race in general.
And that leads us to some final thoughts on Xbox in this great episode where we're trying to focus in on what's going for the now and the future for Xbox. Do appreciate, again, Josh, you sitting down with me. I know your schedule is busy right now, and I know you're coming back to us here in next month. Looking forward to it. But before we head on out, my friend, I wanted to again ask, as an Xbox fan going forward, I mean, you said you've been playing and focusing a lot more in recent months on your PlayStation. Do you see a point in time where Xbox becomes your mainstay once again?
I hope so because I do like I like the user experience with Xbox, and I love the Xbox is in our living room and the PlayStation's in the bedroom, and I like sitting down in a recliner and playing games, but I just like I've said before, I don't have time, or not time, but I there's just hasn't been a reason for me to do that. But yeah, I definitely hope so. I hope I get to a point where like, oh yeah, this game is coming out on Xbox or PlayStation. I'm like, I'm gonna pick up the Xbox copy for sure. Like I would love to get back to that. And I think a lot of like my origins with Xbox come from the multiplayer, and I don't really have a lot of friends that play multiplayer games anymore. So maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, I definitely do hope that Xbox puts some things out that makes me want to sit there and devote some time to it.
Looking forward to hearing continued thoughts on this. I know, again, next month, Xbox will have its showcase because there's no E3. So, next best thing is they're doing their Xbox showcase and then the Starfield showcase right after it. What are you expecting or what are you hoping from that press conference?
I was just about to ask you what you were expecting. Ah,
I'm hoping for Avowed. I'm hope the Avowed I think is the next non Gears. Okay, if Gears 6 gets debuted for a 2024 release, that's obviously going to break the bank from everybody else out there. But if Avowed continues to look good after its initial debut, like you said, so many years ago, the last
mhm.
time it was shown off, it's Obsidian. Obsidian so far has had a great track record in recent times with the Outer Limits and all the good stuff that they put out on a smaller and larger level. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can bring out. That could be the title that brings a lot of people into the Xbox if they have not already, if that actually does hold to fruition.
Yes, absolutely agree with you there. I it's funny. I'm not interested in Halo or Gears. Like I don't really care any. Like I'll play those games when they come out, but that's not like what I'm aching to hear from them. What I would
This
like
is
them to
not the
do.
Josh of 2016. That's all I remember.
No, no, the Josh from 2016 has become bummed and soul crushed by some of this stuff that's going on with Xbox. Um, I would love to see them like diving into the Japanese market. Like there aren't like I personally enjoy Japanese RPGs, especially because that's like what I have time to play now. Like I don't have time for these massive experiences anymore. Like I can play something that's like 40 hours long, and I'm happy with it. But they have that whole market, and I don't know why. Like Sony has a lot of JRPGs, and they produce collectability. They create there's a fandom for it, and that's something that Microsoft has never really gotten into. So I would love to see
Well, when
them.
they've tried to dip their toes in the water on it, like a Blue Dragon and whatnot, it's just not
Mhm.
worked out for them long term.
Well, they need to make deals with existing franchises, like the Atelier series, the Ys series. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. Like, hey, let's put this stuff on Xbox and see what happens, And if people enjoy those experiences, I think they'd be more likely to jump onto something new that was designed for the Xbox, like Blue Dragon or um, actually, you know what would be good? A Lost Odyssey 2. Like, I think I could
There you
sign
go.
on for that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's single player experiences. That's what I want on the Xbox, and there have not been like a lot of great ones on there. But I want something that like has substance to it. That's why I think the JRPGs would be a good route to go. But at this point, I really don't know. I don't know. I wish I wish I did. At this point, I'm gonna be like the person that see something drop on Games Pass one night while I'm surfing Netflix or whatever. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll download and check it out, and maybe it could sway my interest. But I'm not sitting here like thinking like, oh man, I can't wait for this to come out.
Before we go, you got to go ahead and do the hard pitch, my friend. You've been working hard behind the scenes, not only trying to take care of that growing family that you've been growing this year, that have already, and congratulations to you on that. The thing is, though, you've expanded your business, thehappyhoarder.com. at happyhoarder.com. The Happy Hoarder has really done a lot of good business for you. I see your social media out there really doing well. Tell us what's going on with the Happy Hoarder.
So it is happyhoardercollectibles.com, and you can check it out. I just redid the entire website. We got Funko Pops and action figures, Pokemon cards, trading cards, like pretty much everything. There's something there for everybody. But yeah, check it out. I just put up a pretty neat clearance section so you can order. We got some DC multiverse stuff on there. Yeah, it's been a process growing it, putting it together. We've been popping up at shows out here. I'm hoping next year I'll be able to do some stuff out of state. And I know someone had mentioned one of the people I did a Comic Con for out here had mentioned Vegas coming up, so maybe we'll make an appearance out there at some point. But yeah, it's been good. It's been growing. It's stuff I love. So yeah, check it out, happyhoardercollectibles.com. If there's something that you want that you can't find, I've actually had a couple instances where I've searched and scoured for things for people and have had some success finding them.
There you go. Happyhoardercollectibles.com. Go ahead and check out all the great things that Josh has waiting for you at happyhoardercollectibles.com. Well, my friend, I missed you, man. I miss you.
I know. It's been fun, man. It's been fun. I have an idea. I'd like to I was thinking about this last night, looking at like the massive amount of movies I have in my collection, and I think that we need to each go through our movie collections
Mhm.
and pick out the 10 worst movies that we own, but have an explanation for why we own them.
Okay, fair enough. Although I still have a conversation I expect from you on why there's so much clamoring over the past 5 years or so since the video game collecting boom really took off. Why are people interested in the GameCube? That I want to have a conversation on as well.
That's a great question. But yes, we shall explore that.
Absolutely. I've been waiting to ask you that one now for hmm, almost 5 months now. So I'm looking forward to have that conversation with you next month because definitely looking forward to it. Plus, like you said, the 10 worst movies that we have in our collection and why. Definitely looking forward to hearing on that. Plus, all the latest news and trends in pop culture. Obviously, talking the future of Marvel too. Definitely should have a conversation on your thoughts on the MCU and where it stands now. That's another probably half-hour conversation in hand,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
great to have you here, my friend. We'll have you back in the fold and in the saddle in June. Looking forward to it, but wishing you and the family the best and looking forward to many great things with you, my friend, right here in the pop culture cosmos.